Raise your hand if you are certain 100% that your sickness is due to working at Hanford.
Absolutely.
Couldn't be anything else.
No.
Nope.
I've got chronic Brilliant disease.
Toxic encephalopathy, frontal temporal dementia.
Been diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
COPD. I had my thyroid removed.
Chemicals we took in screwed us up. It screwed us up bad. And for somebody to
Their doctors agree these people are sick from the dangerous and dirty work at Hanford. But the U.S. Department of Energy, which runs the site, doesn't see it that way.
They say it didn't happen out there. I'm a liar.
Unless you got a bone sticking out of your arm, they're not gonna accept your claim.
Instead of helping them, the workers say the government routinely wages a cruel campaign to deny their medical claims. Notices like these come in fast and furious. We're planning to reject your claim. There's no evidence of a work-related condition. You've got no proof you're sick from work. We've decided to recommend claim denial. Your condition is not the result of an industrial injury.
And this is probably just a fraction of it, right?
Yeah, just a little bit of it.
Heaps of paperwork show how they're fighting the deep pockets of the feds, hiring lawyers, racking up medical and legal bills, and for many, going broke.
Got to cash out my 401k and sell a bunch of stuff just to get by, just so that, we were able to feed our kids, and we've got 3 children.
How many of you feel that once you got sick, you were just discarded?
Yeah.
And they don't care. They don't care.
Records obtained by King show at Hanford, worker comp claims are rejected at a rate 52% higher than the state average. Does that make sense? A much higher rejection rate at the most contaminated place in the Western Hemisphere.
Which doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense at all.
Tom Carpenter is the executive director of the advocacy group Hanford Challenge.
And it's an outrage. These are workers working on our behalf to clean up the most dangerous site in the United States. And yet we treat them like this. We throw them on the garbage heap and deny them medical care. It's unacceptable.
In the 1940s, Hanford began a top-secret mission, producing plutonium for the country's nuclear arsenal. The worst left behind from that era? 56 million gallons of radioactive waste stored in underground tanks. And here's the hazard to workers. The tanks release cocktails of harmful chemical vapors. Toxins like mercury, nitrous oxide, formaldehyde, butanol, and nitropropane will vent into the breathing space of workers without any warning at all. That's exactly what happened to Mario Diaz, not once or twice, but 7 times in his 30-year career. A blast of chemicals in 2014 hit him the hardest.
I went down,
A once active dad, grandfather, and fisherman, Diaz's lung damage got worse with each chemical exposure. Now he's mostly a shut-in and relies on inhalers and 19 pills a day to breathe.
in this life, as strong as I want to be, it's harder than hell. I can't do what I want to do. These are L&I claims.
After every chemical event, Diaz submitted a workers' comp claim.
For exposures that I received.
And each time, this is what he heard back.
The answer is no.
There's a special setup at Hanford for worker comp claims. They aren't managed by the state L&I. Instead, the Department of Energy gets to run its own program and hire its own contractor to screen and filter claims. That company is Penzer North America out of Richland.
Penzer is going to do what it takes to get paid and to make its customer happy.
Do any of you feel like Penzer has tried to be fair and impartial?
No.
We wanted to ask Hanford officials about the program, but they turned us down. So we caught up with the top boss over the site's medical system in a parking lot.
Hi, Mr. Shoup. I'm Susanna Frame from King TV. We're here to talk to you about the Hanford medical program. Is the Department of Energy in cahoots with Penzer?
Well, we're certainly not in cahoots to deny any claims or so forth.
Doug Shoup told us he'd just gotten out of a meeting discussing this very topic with labor leaders who are advocating for the sick and forgotten, like Mario Diaz. They asked for an end to the denials and to the contract with Penzer.
I asked for the meeting.
Listen to Shoup's answer when I ask about the company.
Are you happy with the job that Penzer's doing?
I'd prefer not to make a statement on that.
For Mario Diaz, it is a daily struggle to get enough air. But now he's suffering from something he says is even worse.
So I'm a mess. That's the bottom line. I'm a mess.
Memory loss. For many Hanford workers, toxins like mercury have caused permanent brain damage.
2.5 parts per million, furan, mercury. Well, there's the mercury.
Penzer's doctor said his memory problems are probably from high blood pressure and sleep apnea, not from working at the dirtiest job site in America.
I don't even know where I was going with that.
We certainly give our best thoughts to Mario. He's obviously struggling, but he has a very good attitude, which is pretty remarkable. It's important to know that by law, it is really only the state L&I that can officially accept or reject a claim. But the L&I officials tell us that they have to rely on the information and the recommendations sent to them by Penzer. Penzer turned us down for an interview, but they sent us an email to say they're a compassionate company and that they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is follow the law.
And I did not feel that it was in the best interest of the worker.
Powerful statement right there. Tonight, for the very first time, the former top doctor at Hanford is speaking out. And he accuses top managers at the site of pressuring him to basically just abandon his ethics, potentially sending workers back into harm's way.
King 5 investigator Susanna Frame has investigated Hanford for years. Tonight she exposes the backdoor dealings in her series, Sick and Forgotten at Hanford.
I'll just see if I can listen through your shirt. Put that on. Okay, and we'll listen to your neck here.
In 30 years of medical practice, Dr. Lauren Lewis says he's never seen tactics like those used at Hanford. Where the work is so hazardous, you'd expect the strictest safety rules. Instead, he found executives strong-arming him to relax rules and throw his ethics by the wayside.
It was very difficult to stand up against that, and there was a lot of force.
In the mid-2000s, Lewis was the top medical professional at the site.
And really no way to sample that.
Legally and ethically, it was his job to oversee Hanford's medical programs, aimed at keeping 11,000 workers safe, a big task at the most contaminated workplace in America.
My interest was the health of the worker and keeping them safe and not letting them go back to a situation where they could be harmed further.
But according to Lewis, the Department of Energy, which owns Hanford, didn't see it that way. The controversy surrounded this fine dust, beryllium, a highly toxic metal. It was used during Hanford's 40-plus years of production to make nuclear weapons.
Were you wearing even just like a minimal mask, anything?
Nothing.
Some workers like Tom Peterson exposed to beryllium become allergic to it or develop a life-threatening disease.
It's not only just your immune system, it's your joints, it's your muscles, it's your eyes, it's your brain.
He's on oxygen 24/7 with only 30% of his lung capacity left. To help affected workers from getting worse, Dr. Lewis insisted on keeping them away from any beryllium at the site. But he was told a top Department of Energy official, Doug Shoup, was demanding a switch in the policy, one that would loosen up restrictions on the toxic metal.
Basically telling me that had to be done.
Dr. Lewis's interpretation, getting the work done, was more important than worker safety.
How can that possibly be in the best interest of someone's health?
Well, it wasn't. It was in the best interest of the employer and their profitability and getting people to do the work regardless of what the health consequences were.
Beryllium, gram for gram, is one of the most toxic substances that we know of.
Dr. Lee Newman of the University of Colorado is the top expert on beryllium in the world.
It takes a seemingly trivial amount of beryllium to cause this disease. If you're not being as strict as possible in controlling the exposures, then it's unfortunately easy for people to be overexposed.
A trail of internal emails obtained by King shows the pressure put on Dr. Lewis to do things the Department of Energy way. His boss wrote, "You received specific guidance from Doug Shoup to reword the policy. You're questioning this direction, which is inexcusable." Dr. Lewis shot back. He wrote, "There's no medical support for those changes. I'm being forced and under duress to manipulate a medical policy by people who aren't doctors. And going along with it would put Hanford workers at increased risk."
I was harassed the same way he was. Work life was pretty doggone bad.
Mary Sams was a nurse and beryllium case manager at Hanford. 7 years ago, she was fired for, according to her, trying to keep a beryllium-affected worker out of harm's way.
You were literally fired for trying to protect a worker?
Yeah. Yeah.
We asked for an interview with Doug Shoup, the Department of Energy official accused of trying to manipulate Dr. Lewis's professional opinions. They turned us down.
Hi, Mr. Shoup. I'm Susanna Frame from King TV.
Shoup's been promoted at Hanford since Dr. Lewis's time. He denied meddling in medical practices, which would violate federal regulation.
Did you pressure him in any way regarding that Code of Federal Regulations?
I don't believe I have.
Nobody deserves this. Nobody deserves it.
Tom Peterson says the place where he dedicated 26 years of his life betrayed him, treated him like a disposable number.
They wanted us to believe that what we were hearing in our health and safety classes was spot on.
But
it wasn't spot on. They lied to us, flat out lied to us.
And I did not feel that it was in the best interest of the worker.
Dr. Lewis refused to cave in. 19 days after he put his foot down once and for all, this happened.
And my supervisor gave me a note and said that the Department of Energy had lost confidence in my leadership and fired me on the spot.
Dr. Lewis says on behalf of the sick and forgotten like Tom Peterson, the fight, the stress, the loss of a job was all worth it.
I was in a way proud of myself that I was willing to stand my ground and stick up for my principles and the ethics that I felt were important. And if I did it again, I would do the same thing.
Wouldn't change anything you did?
No.
Dr. Lewis now works for a different federal agency, the Department of Labor, helping sick nuclear workers. During that time, back in the mid-2000s, he tried to get the word out about what was going on. He filed complaints to even the Department of Energy back in D.C. Teams came out and investigated, but nothing ever came of it. He was very disappointed about that as well. Part of the reason he's speaking out now, he wants to bring attention to what happened in the past in case what he believes is most likely still happening now at the Hanford site.
Very powerful statements that he made. Susanna, thank you.
Sure.
They spend millions of dollars denying claims that they could be putting towards these workers that are sick and dying.
A King 5 investigation takes a dramatic turn tonight as the state legislature considers a new law to get sick Hanford workers the help they need. Good evening, I'm Lori Matsukawa.
And I'm Mark Wright. Thanks for joining us. So we found workers at the nuclear site are systematically denied workers' comp claims, with the federal government and its contractor aggressively fighting workers at every turn.
As King 5's Susanna Frame reports in her series Sick and Forgotten at Hanford, lawmakers heard emotional testimony today from workers desperate for change.
My family's affected. I don't get the last year and a half, I haven't been able to experience the moments with them that I should as their father.
Lawmakers from the House Labor Committee heard from sick workers like Seth Ellingsworth today. Ever since he inhaled a blast of chemical vapors on the job 18 months ago, he can't work, can't get a full breath of air, and can't be the dad he used to be.
All I did wrong was I went to work and I trusted these people that I worked for. I trusted DOE, I trusted the contractors, and I thought I was safe.
Other workers came to Olympia to tell legislators after getting sick from working around the most hazardous chemicals and heavy metals on Earth, they get the ultimate insult. The U.S. Department of Energy, which owns Hanford, tells them you're not sick, and even if you are, You didn't get it at work.
I have liver disease, cirrhosis. I've never had a drink in my life. I've never smoked, ever. And my health, my health is greatly affected by it.
It's like they want you to quit. They got the wrong dog here because I'm not letting go of the bone. I'm just not. And I'm really angry.
Records obtained by King 5 show at Hanford, worker comp claims are rejected at a rate 52% higher than the state average, a higher rejection rate at the most dangerous place to work in the state.
They spend millions of dollars denying claims that they could be putting towards these workers that are sick and dying.
The bill proposed today would give Hanford workers a much better shot at justice. It says if you come down with illnesses like lung disease, dementia, and certain cancers, it's presumed you most likely got it from your job at Hanford, the biggest nuclear dump in the country.
Our federal government has had the opportunity to fix this problem for decades and has not stepped up to this moral imperative. But you and our legislature can right this wrong.
Those working on this bill feel positive it will make it successfully out of the House, but they feel the real test will be in the Senate and whether the leadership there will go along.
They live in their fancy houses, they do whatever, they go on their vacations. It doesn't affect them. But who holds them accountable?
Tonight, the King 5 investigators report on a decades-long deliberate cover-up at Hanford involving a highly toxic metal you've probably never heard of. It's called beryllium, a key component in making nuclear weapons. For years, the federal government knew about the dangers of this metal, yet they kept it secret from the workforce.
Tonight, King 5's Susanna Frame shows us an employee looking for some answers. It's her series called Sick and Forgotten at Hanford.
You're watching some of the most dangerous work tackled at Hanford, decontaminating underground vaults covered with the byproducts of radioactive nuclear waste.
It's, like America's Chernobyl.
The man on the back is Dave Ardall, a former Marine and competitive athlete. Ardall was on the front lines of work like this at the site for a decade. That was 9 years ago. Today, this 45-year-old is sick and dying from an incurable lung disease.
They have stripped away every bit of quality of life from not just him, but from all of us.
Instead of working and playing with his 3 young children,
take a breath, let the air out.
Ardall spends his days at doctor's appointments.
Good.
He's in kidney failure, has excruciating nerve damage, chronic fatigue, and diabetes.
Pain medicine here, for my pain.
And do you take these as well?
I take those as well.
It takes dozens of pills a day to keep him going.
Going through this every day and having my kids see dad like this. It never used to be like that. It's tough. Really tough.
For 45 years, Hanford was one of the most important factories for the country's nuclear weapons program. Everyone knew radiation was a killer, but there was another hazard workers didn't know about, a toxic metal called beryllium. Beryllium dust traveled all over to places like those vaults where Dave Ardall worked.
I can't think of a metal that's more toxic than beryllium.
Dr. Lee Newman of the University of Colorado is the world's leading expert on beryllium.
It sounds like you're saying in some cases beryllium can be even more dangerous than a radionuclide.
In some cases, yes.
I couldn't believe, that this was me. This inside my lungs, they're all inflamed and red.
In 2008, Ardall got sick with all the signs of the life-threatening illness, chronic beryllium disease, or CBD.
Hard to believe.
Very hard to believe.
His wife, Christine, watched her husband's body and mental state fall apart.
He just doesn't want to exist anymore because he's in so much pain. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to live the rest of his life in total pain.
Hanford is one of the only places beryllium dust exists in the state of Washington, so it seemed easy to connect the dots. Working around beryllium gave Ardall the rare condition of chronic beryllium disease.
You see that big mass right there?
Several doctors diagnosed him with it. But when he applied for workers' compensation, this is what he heard back. We're asking the state to reject your claim. Your condition is not the result of the exposure alleged. This is not an occupational disease. We found you didn't work around beryllium. Your claim is being denied.
As soon as I got sick, they flushed me down the toilet like I was used toilet paper.
This is the company behind those rejections, Penzer North America in Richland. They manage worker comp claims on behalf of Hanford's owner, the U.S. Department of Energy.
If you work in a beryllium area,
boxes of documents show the way the system rolls. If you submit a claim for CBD, Penzer and the feds typically wage an expensive, cutthroat legal battle. That doesn't seem right. Hanford is an infamous worksite for having significant beryllium contamination.
And it shows a perfect example of how they treat the workers and their families like dirt and could care less. Absolutely.
Records show that for years, the federal government knowingly risked the lives of workers by allowing them to be overexposed to beryllium. A declassified report by a Hanford expert in 1953 detailed that even when exposures have been low, it's led to acute poisoning and fatalities. But the government sat on that for decades.
So they lied to the workers.
They lied to the workers.
State Representative Jerry Paulette is a Hanford and beryllium expert.
The one word I will use is criminal. It's not just a cover-up, it's criminal.
In the year 2000, the Department of Energy finally came clean about beryllium. But at Hanford, they didn't buy in. They dragged their feet on protecting workers from the metal for 10 more years. A 10-year window when people like Dave Ardall were sent directly into harm's way and came down with CBD.
This was like a death sentence to anyone who already had beryllium exposure and sensitization.
We were all deceived, and it was production over safety.
Production over safety.
Yeah.
The Ardall's case even went to court, where a troubling fact came to light. Under oath, Hanford's top doctor, Karen Phillips, testified a Department of Energy official pressured her to go against workers like Dave Ardall. The doctor said Julie Yamauchi directed her to stop diagnosing people with chronic beryllium disease.
She should be fired from her job. Who is she to tell a medical doctor that she can't diagnose or treat or anything of that sort? That's not in her job description. She's not a medical doctor.
We asked the Department of Energy for an interview with Julie Yamauchi. When they turned us down, her boss said he wasn't aware of those allegations.
If you were to hear that that was happening, that this advocate, your employee, was pressuring and telling a medical professional what to do, what would you think of that?
Well, I don't know that we are qualified to make those decisions. That's why we have a site medical director.
Hi, honey. How's your day? Got all your fancy colors here, huh?
The Ardalls are trying to soldier ahead the best they can. But last Christmas, they got more news about Dave's health.
I got lung cancer now and colon cancer.
The family isn't giving up. They won't stop looking for justice until they see a change in the system and someone held accountable.
They gave them a death penalty. They're all dying slowly and miserably. And it doesn't affect them. They carry on, they make money, they live in their fancy houses, they do whatever, they go on their vacations. It doesn't affect them. But who holds them accountable? When does this end?
After a 4-year battle, Dave Ardall prevailed. He won his court case, but Penzer didn't give up. They sent him to another doctor who said, yes, you have chronic beryllium disease, but you're well enough to work. Your claim for disability is denied.
Tonight we have an important development in our series called Sick and Forgotten at Hanford.
The U.S. Department of Energy has canceled the contract with the business at the center of our investigation. King 5 investigator Susanna Frame here now with an update.
Lori, the company is Penzer North America. They've been in charge of Hanford's worker compensation claims for the past 8 years, and tonight they've been told their contract is ending.
Yes, that's all I gotta say. Thank God. Thank God.
Because?
Because they have destroyed our lives. They destroyed our lives.
That's the reaction from Hanford workers and their families after hearing this company, Penzer North America, won't be around much longer. To get help for her sick husband, Melinda Rouse has been fighting an ugly legal battle with Penzer going on 8 long years.
It's like the best day of my entire life right here in this one little moment.
Really?
That's good because that's how hard we've had to fight him.
Since 2009, workers who feel they've gotten sick from working at the hazardous nuclear site are directed to Penzer to review and manage their claims. But through a review of hundreds of documents and interviews with dozens of workers and experts, King 5 has found Penzer uses unfair tactics to get those claims denied.
Do any of you feel like Penzer has tried to be fair and impartial?
No.
We found Penzer submitting incomplete and misinformation to doctors. Doctor shopping. Penzer sending people to their hired physicians until, according to the workers, they get the result they need to deny a claim. Others have felt harassed by condescending phone calls and tactics such as running credit checks on workers.
How'd they make you feel?
Like a criminal. The way they treat you, I mean, you're doing credit checks and they talk down to you and they talk down to you and just, it's horrible.
It's progress for anybody at Hanford that's ever been sick, ever.
To get rid of Penzer.
To get rid of Penzer. They should have been gone a long time ago.
Penzer will stay in place at Hanford until September when their contract expires. There were plans to continue with the company through 2019.